Going into this season, there was a sentiment around Seattle that the Seahawks were good enough to win a Super Bowl as long as they had a good enough team around Geno Smith. Now, when Geno Smith during this past offseason got that 3-year extension worth $75 million, not too many people felt it was a bad move because everybody looked at Seattle's roster and they say, well, Geno Smith has great receivers. You draft JSN in the first round. You got Tyler Lockett, DK Metcalf. You got a really good offensive line. You got a really good group of running backs with Zach Charbonnet and Kenneth Walker that there's enough talent around Geno Smith for him to take Seattle to the Super Bowl as long as he can give you solid quarterback play. Plus, you're playing in a conference where the only elite quarterback that you have to go up against right now is Jalen Hurts in the postseason potentially. So it kind of made sense for Geno Smith to get that 3-year extension from Seattle. And if you're a Seahawks fan, you were right to have a lot of optimism that Geno Smith was good enough to give you a championship caliber team, even if he isn't as good as a guy like Jalen Hurts or Joe Burrow or Patrick Mahomes. But this season, though, he's looked completely different from the Geno Smith that we saw in 2022. In 2022, Geno Smith went from not riding back, playing like an MVP candidate, to a year later, playing like a below average quarterback and looking like a guy who needs to be replaced. Now, against the Cincinnati Bengals, right, it wasn't all his fault why Seattle lost that game. The offensive line didn't really do him no favors. The running game wasn't as consistent as it needed to be. But at the end of the day, though, Seattle still had an opportunity to win that game, and Geno Smith coughed it up with costly red zone interceptions. And even when you look at this blowout loss that Seattle suffered recently to the Baltimore Ravens, yes, the Ravens were just a way more talented football team and Seattle didn't show up for that game, and you just can't put it all on Geno Smith. Geno Smith had bad decision making. He also was inaccurate. He's not really great with pressure in his face. Geno Smith is holding back Seattle, and it looks like Seattle got fool's gold when they re-signed Geno Smith to that 3-year extension. They should have just went ahead and drafted a quarterback in this past year's NFL draft and tried to groom Geno Smith's future replacement. And now Seattle's in a situation where, although they're going to be able to get out of this contract because they got it out in 2024 where they only take a $17.4 million dead cap hit. But even then, what were the better options that were out there on the quarterback market? Seattle could have went out there and offered Lamar Jackson a contract extension, and Lamar could have been an upgrade over Geno Smith this year. You could have drafted a Will Levis or maybe traded up for Bryce Young or CJ Stroud in the 2023 NFL draft and secure the future of your quarterback position for the next couple of decades. But instead, you go the route and say, you know what? We're going to keep Geno Smith. He had one good season. We got a good enough team and a good enough coaching staff to support Geno Smith. But Geno Smith, he's not holding up his end of the bargain. He's riding back right now. It's funny how we said that he didn't ride back last year. Well, he's definitely riding back to a lot of doubters this season. Geno Smith is not good enough for the Seattle Seahawks to even win a playoff game. They may be able to make it to the playoffs with Geno Smith, but that's only because the teams that they have to go up against don't really have any elite quarterbacks. Anytime we've seen Geno Smith matched up against an elite quarterback, it hasn't really gone in Seattle's favor. He got outplayed by Joe Burrow. He got outplayed by Lamar Jackson. He completed under 50% of his passes. That's inexcusable with the team that Geno Smith had around him. And yes, the Baltimore Ravens did have just an overall great game. Everything seemed to work for them. But when nothing's going right for you, when you have an elite quarterback like Lamar Jackson or Patrick Mahomes or Joe Burrow, they can bail you out. They can carry your team. Geno Smith isn't the kind of quarterback that can carry your team. When Geno Smith is at his best is when Seattle has Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet going. If you can't play complementary football and you find yourselves in games where Seattle just has to throw the ball 40, 50 times with Geno Smith to lead you to a win, that's a winning recipe for failure. Now, I still believe that Seattle is going to be a playoff team this year, but I don't think they're going to make it to the Super Bowl. And you may be like, JT, why are you mentioning Seattle and Super Bowl in the same breath? Well, because idiotically, I picked this team to make it to the Super Bowl. My Super Bowl prediction for this year was Seattle versus Cincinnati because I thought that Geno Smith would give this team at least top 12, top 10 quarterback play. You know, I was thinking there can be no difference between Kirk Cousins and Geno Smith, but Kirk Cousins, prior to his injury, played like a top 5 quarterback. Geno Smith has looked like a below average at best quarterback. He looks like a bridge quarterback, one of those quarterbacks that can give you okay quarterback play, keep you afloat, but he's not going to be able to win you the big games, and you're not going to be able to do anything with him in the playoffs. Seattle got fooled by Geno Smith. He had that one good season in 2022, and it seems like this dude has just bounced back to the Geno Smith that we saw prior to the Russell Wilson trade happening. And everybody was laughing when Seattle was the winners of the Russell Wilson trade, and they still are. But when you look at the quarterback play that you're getting out of Geno Smith, the trade doesn't look as one-sided as you may think, because Geno Smith hasn't even been better than Russell Wilson this season. I think that they've played on pretty much the same level. And if you give Russell Wilson, even with them looking like he's lost a lot compared to what he was in his prime, with JSN, a better offensive line, DK, and Tyler Lockett, I don't think there's any difference between Russell Wilson in 2023 versus 2023 Geno Smith. Last year, Geno Smith had 30 touchdowns and 11 interceptions. Right now, he has 7 interceptions right now. He's easily going to throw way more picks than what he threw last season. He threw a really nice deep ball. Well, there hasn't really been a lot of big plays downfield for the Seattle Seahawks. You see DK Metcalf getting frustrated pretty often because he's not getting targeted often. Where the hell has Tyler Lockett been? The Seattle Seahawks got fooled into giving Geno Smith an extension. And although it's not an extension that is bad like how the Daniel Jones extension is, because they do have a way to get out of this, but you're still going to have to eat a good amount of cap space. And I don't think it makes sense to cut Geno Smith. It would make sense just to go ahead, draft a quarterback at the back end of next year's NFL draft, maybe a Bo Nix, a Michael Penix, a Quinn Ewers, and let that guy sit behind Geno Smith until Geno Smith regresses to the point where you got to start the young guy. There are Seahawks fans that feel like Geno Smith should get benched right now, but do you really think that Drew Lock can give you better quarterback play than Geno Smith? Because you can get a lot worse out of what you're getting right now from the QB position out of Drew Lock. We don't know if Drew Lock is all that good. You may say, JT, we got to give the man a chance. You can't give Drew Lock a chance in a situation like this where you still have a lot to play for. You still have the opportunity to win the NFC West. You still have an opportunity to remain in playoff contention. Now, if you feel like Geno Smith is so bad that you got to start Drew Lock, then okay, but you don't start Drew Lock for the reasons we got to see what he has. No, you do that when you have nothing else to play for. If Seattle was in a situation like the New York Giants and they pretty much were in tank for Caleb Williams mode, then yes, it would make sense to see what Drew Lock has. But Geno Smith is still a better quarterback than Drew Lock. Drew Lock, he didn't look bad in the preseason, but there's a reason why Geno Smith won the quarterback competition over Drew Lock last year. If Drew Lock was truly that good, he would be starting over Geno Smith right now. I don't think going to Drew Lock gives you a shot. You may feel like we need to see what he has, but you don't take a gamble or a dice roll like that at this point in the season. You only do that when you're out of playoff contention. The Seattle Seahawks got fooled into thinking that Geno Smith was good enough to lead this team to a championship, and I did too. You know, like I thought that Geno Smith was going to be able to pick up from where he left off last year because the team around him was just too good for him to regress. But we've seen over the last couple of years, guys like Blake Bortles get extensions, and after they get extensions, they fall off. Same thing with Daniel Jones. If you have questions about a guy being good enough to get you to a Super Bowl, I think that shows you how you need to go ahead and try to upgrade that position. Geno Smith, I like the brother. I love him as a person, but right now he doesn't look it at quarterback for Seattle.